Follow me with your shape-shifting smiles and I see you. Maybe they'll believe you. Illuminati, a curved dawn trial, silver discs and hidden files, and we see you. We've got to believe you. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another epic episode of the Hyper Anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast, also known as Hero Paranormal. My name is Ryan, the anomalous ambassador of the airwaves, broadcasting from just south of Area 51 at the base at La Madre Mountain. And I don't know who exactly was at the awards show in France, but if you guys had a chance to see that, it was allegedly Jim Carey. A lot of people are claiming that was not Jim Carey. Some are saying they got him too. The cloning operation is full scale, and the dragnet has gotten the one, the only Jim Carey, unless he's had some work done. And it really does not look like him. I'm going to pop an image here on the screen in just a moment. Now, if you haven't gone over to heroparanormal.com, slide on over there. There's a bunch of content over there. We have, if you go to the store or the shop, you can go over to my small eBay store, and I'm selling Spice Natural Bronze, the all-in-one bronzer, moisturizer, amazing stuff. The best ingredients, keeps your skin looking amazing. Even if you live in the Mojave Desert like myself, or you visit the high desert of Utah's Uinta Basin often, it'll keep your skin looking amazing. Take care of your skin like your life depends on it, because it does. And most importantly, slide on over to the little subscribe section. There's a little green subscribe button. Hit it. Subscribe. Okay, so we don't know who this person was. They're claiming it's Jim Carey. There's so much going on right now. Oh my gosh. I don't know what to do, because I was supposed to go and meet with somebody, and then all this stuff. I have to hit this before the weekend comes. I don't know who this person was accepting awards. Here's the image. Allegedly, this is Jim Carey. Tell me what you think. Okay, and as if that's not enough, Secretary Clinton allegedly never met Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein. She never visited the island. She never flew on his plane. Those are the words of Representative Robert Garcia. As some are saying, well, maybe it was just Zorro ranch hunting parties. And allegedly, you should see the trolling going after Hillary Clinton's deposition. Keep in mind, this is a woman who had Ghislaine Maxwell come to Chelsea Clinton's wedding. And Secretary Clinton has truly been under the microscope. So do you believe this? That was her allegation. She never knew who Jeffrey Epstein was, didn't know anything about it, even though her hubby, Bill, was on the Lolita Express multiple times going to the island. That's interesting. As if, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because that'll take the whole podcast, but I'll come back to that in just a minute. Also, NASA has canceled their moon landing mission. Now, if you've come across this, it's pretty fascinating. There was a moon landing mission allegedly that was going to go. However, something has happened. This allegedly has something to do with the surface of the moon. We never went back, and there's been a lot of delays, several delays, to following up with a moon landing. This is a place we claim to have gone in 1969. And the follow-up Artemis 2 mission which allegedly was going to have 4 astronauts travel around the moon, not even land there, just travel around it. Well, didn't happen. Apparently, NASA's leadership officially said that Artemis 3, originally envisioned as its first modern lunar landing attempt, will no longer attempt to touch down on the moon's surface. This was at a Friday press conference. So it's perhaps significant because we had Artemis 2 where they did their thing. This was Artemis 3. And the Trump administration, this is, they've been very space forward. Trump is the guy that created Space Force. And allegedly, the highlight of the significant delay is that they are trying to develop a Starship-based lunar lander alongside SpaceX. And they're claiming instead Artemis 3, now scheduled for mid-2027, will serve as a test, a place where they can dock 1 or 2 of NASA's human landing systems partners, SpaceX Starship and Blue Origin's Blue Moon lander in the future. So this is pretty wild. They're already planning Artemis 4 and Artemis 5, both lunar landing attempts. And those have been moved back to early or late 2028. So we keep pushing the envelope further and further. And the commitment keeps getting pushed out. A lot of people are arguing that this is to be expected. I don't know. I'm sure that there's talented folks on it. But space may truly be the final frontier if they continue to push this out. As some are joking online, it may be the final frontier, but it's filmed in a Hollywood basement. I don't know about that. We don't have Stanley Kubrick anymore, so I don't know. I'm not going to even argue into that point. Okay, now let's get back to Hillary Clinton. Claiming she never met or knew Jeffrey Epstein. People are joking, specifically the Babylon Bee, if you haven't seen them, they're hilarious. They have written that Hillary Clinton said she only recalls meeting Epstein that one time when she murdered him. They're brutal, crazy, obviously. They're a parody news source. Now, as far as the Epstein files, everybody and anybody that doesn't want to be on them is on them. And it is literally unveiling the Illuminati, it seems, on a daily basis. People are wondering if this is planned concurrent programming, if people are actually planning to do this and that this is being done on purpose. I don't know. It seems as if somebody wants to get this stuff out, and it's been a matter of time for it to come out, and it's leaking out exactly the way I believe it's meant to be leaked out. And now Bill Clinton has testified under oath that President Donald Trump was not involved with Jeffrey Epstein, according to his knowledge. His exact quote was, "Trump has never said anything to me or make me think that he was involved with Epstein." We've heard this before, that Donald Trump and Epstein, he cut ties with Epstein, didn't like him, thought he was a creeper. I don't know about all that. But it does seem like we're diving into the deep end of the pool, and everybody has an opinion. I was talking with a good friend of mine just earlier today. He was angry because he claimed that at the State of the Union address, Donald Trump said that gas prices and food prices have gone down, which they have since he's been in office. Keep in mind, this friend of mine lives in San Diego. He said he hadn't noticed prices going down, but he does live in San Diego. These are things to keep in mind. Here in Nevada, in Utah, the price of gasoline has definitely gone down. The price of eggs has definitely gone down. And for the most part, I'd say, yeah, we were sitting at $5.25 a gallon before. Now we're sitting at like $3.99. That's a significant $1.25. It's, to me, and so everybody's divided on these things. Everybody. Now, if you haven't been keeping up with the Egyptian flights, this is wild. Erica Kirk was joking about, oh, there's no Egyptian flights here with TPUSA. And of course, Candace Owens and Erica Kirk are going at it. Candace is not giving up at all. In fact, her deep dive into Erica Kirk's roots is revealing some pretty disturbing stuff, more questions, I guess, than anything else. But they're really going at it. And Candace is a pit bull. They're asking if Erica Kirk was raised by her mother's sister wife. Now, there is what's known as the Mormon faction polygamous network at Fort Huachuca, allegedly. Got to sneeze here because that was a mouthful. And the last name would be Francie. I believe I'm saying that. I'm probably messing that up. But anyway, Erica Kirk's father, if I'm not mistaken, married a woman who was LDS, became a psychologist. There's a lot of allegations, if you've been listening to Candace Owens, that there could be some MK Ultra type Tesseract schooling type charter school, something under the MK Ultra umbrella. I'm trying to put this in the Reader's Digest version. If you want to hear the full version, Candace Owens goes into great detail, but it's equally difficult to piece together. But basically, the Reader's Digest version is that she's exposing this connection directly to the schooling, the psychology behind it, MK Ultra, whistleblowers, and specifically the Fort Bliss whistleblower soldier Richard Halliday's murder case. Bear with me, it'll all come together. So, as Candace Owens recently dropped what's known as Bride of Charlie, a documentary series, she's raising these questions. Her first time, maybe because the woman has passed away 2 years ago, is this first wife of Erica Kirk's father, who they continued to stay in touch afterwards in Arizona. She went back east to Indiana and got a psychology degree, married well into a military man. And keep in mind, she points out that Indiana was the place where the military was making LSD that they were distributing for MK Ultra and a number of other things. Now, what's getting pointed out is that there are legitimate questions. Don't get me wrong. It's Erica Kirk's origins being tied to a number of military intelligence, and with this latest Bride of Charlie documentary episode, she goes pretty deep, hard into the paint with this MK Ultra psychology stuff. And she points to court records showing irregularities in Erica's 1988 birth date. Bear with me. Her parents as well. And she dives into the fact that she cannot find her parents' marriage certificates or other documents. These were pretty interesting, you know. And she also goes on to say that Aunt Carla, Erica's Aunt Carla, she alleges and points in the direction of believing that Aunt Carla may actually be Erica Kirk's biological mother. Now, bear with me, this is wild and far-fetched. But this scenario would point to a very unusual family structure, to say the least. All the while, she's already gone into the first marriage with this woman, Francie. I believe I'm saying that correct. Francie? Anyway, Francie, who was LDS, a Mormon, and then got into the psychology, became a doctorate in psychology, and very much involved with a number of strange corporations, institutions, and families. Families like the DuPonts, corporations like Quaker Oats, which, believe it or not, were feeding boys. This is going to sound horrible. Feeding, with help of the U.S. military, feeding boys radioactive oats to see the effects. These were the experiments and other things that very much point in the direction of the MK Ultra umbrella. So these accusations are wild. And the family structure seems, the way she approached this and attacked the first marriage first, then the second marriage, pointing to the fact she can't find marriage documents, and then Aunt Carla, this is getting to be very interesting. And there are documented discrepancies that many are alleging demand some sort of eyes on them. Now, especially given the fact that we know there is, of course, incestuous factions operating along the same border where Fort Huachuca and Fort Bliss sit, namely LDS polygamous factions. Now, what's strange about the first marriage with this psychologist of Erica Kirk's father, with this psychologist female who became a psychologist, so he married this woman. She claims that when she was 14, she ran away. She basically sort of forged some docs to make herself look older. She was 14, allegedly already pregnant. There's some rumor, without saying it, there is some allegation that she was already knocked up. We don't know if it was by this gentleman she married or not. But now, given the fact that we know about a Mormon polygamous and incestuous faction operating along the same border where Fort Huachuca and Fort Bliss sit, I think Candace Owens has done a pretty good job of kind of bringing this tapestry all together. Keep in mind that Fort Huachuca and Fort Bliss sit on the border region of Chihuahua, Mexico, a place where there have been many colonies, specifically, and this is important to point out, these are not regular LDS. This would be fundamental or FLDS colonies for the most part, and they've settled there generations ago. Families like the Romneys, the LeBarons, etc. And many of them hold dual citizenships, and they can go back and forth across the border as they please because they're dual citizens. Many have risen to high positions in our intelligence institutions, and they still have ties to this location. So you can kind of see where Candace Owens is going with this, that basically we have colonies, people with dual citizenship, networks of these individuals that have formed alliances with intelligence, child abuse rings, Mexican cartels, joined elite secret societies, even some tied to Jeffrey Epstein and, believe it or not, John of God. And if you haven't checked into him, there's a lot of information about this guy online. Actually, I was just recently reading an article with pictures of John B. Alexander, Colonel John B. Alexander with John of God. Of course, Colonel John B. Alexander is considered the father of modern non-lethal weaponry. Some have various names for him, which are not the best. I will keep those off my tongue. But evidence has confirmed that there is a network, right? It goes into intelligence, goes over into Mexico. Some of these are in high positions of political, military, law enforcement, like I said, institutions that have to do with intelligence. And then, of course, Erica's father was doing things for intelligence people allegedly in other countries as well. So we're going to get into all this because there's a connection to, of all places, that place I was joking about with Hillary Clinton, the Zorro Ranch. And that's the 7,600 acre New Mexico property with its own airstrip, its own hangar. He could fly in and out of there from the U.S. Virgin Islands. And it's located at the north border of the White Sands Missile Range and Fort Bliss. So you see how close this is all coming together. It is an area that hosted quote-unquote meetings of elite. And there's been a lot of strange things that had happened at the Zorro Ranch. If you remember, Judge Scalia actually died there. We don't exactly know how or why. Some stuff has been commissioned and investigated, but very little. We don't really know. And the wildest part about this ranch is as you go in, Epstein had commissioned a large-scale copy of what's known as the Massacre of the Innocents. This is a massive display at the entrance of the ranch. It's a 1591 painting depicting babies being killed. And people are wondering why. Now, Epstein has not lied. I'm talking about him like he's still alive. Please forgive me. Epstein, in his conversations with Steve Bannon, got into explaining how he gathered physicists and scientists from White Sands Missile Range when they were kind of laying them off. He was there to pick them up for various projects, genetic experimentation, and something called, well, suggested by Epstein, something having to do with human biology as raw material to be harvested. This is recognized by many, or alleged to be recognized as the centrifuge for some of this human trafficking, or part of it, right? That this trafficking in some way, shape, or form has to do not only with longevity, but retaining fluids and other human biology or raw material for experimentation. So Epstein has made, in those conversations, those interviews with Steve Bannon, he makes no excuse about honestly saying, yeah, I picked up a bunch of scientists from White Sands, brought them to the ranch to do experiments. He says that, and he calls it the strange. A lot of people have alleged that this sounds a lot like Stranger Things when it comes to the human biology. But if biology has a financial payoff, which it seems like it may have, or at least a potential financial payoff, it would make sense to literally employ scientists from a military base. And who knows what exactly they were doing. I can't talk about it. But let's get back to the borders. So there was a gentleman, a whistleblower named Richard Halliday, who was allegedly murdered. Well, no, I mean, he's no longer with us, so that he's unalived for sure. But there is something called Code Red, where he was allegedly murdered for exposing, or basically exposing, the El Paso Mormon faction cartel. That's a real thing. The El Paso Mormon faction cartel. And back to these dual citizens that are bouncing back and forth from these colonies across the border. It makes this criminal trafficking much easier to do if you have a dual citizenship. Connecting those with the polygamous colonies and showing alliances of criminal trafficking networks. We're talking of everything, not only contraband, but human trafficking. And this is disturbing when you place it together or in close proximity with Epstein's interest in this genetic, biological, raw material testing. The scientists that may have been manipulating genes and using human bodies potentially, or this raw material, as a commodity. So this is something that is more and more difficult to look into. I've looked into it very deeply. But what I can tell you is that there are suspects in this El Paso Mormon faction cartel network. There are suspects. There is an investigation. I will get to some of these questions coming in. Sorry, guys, I can't hit them right now. I'm on a limited time period, as always. But, yeah, it's very, very strange. Now, we're going to get into some of the structure of these colonies, how they operate, and they do have a lot of power. There are a number of people, if you follow some of this information, that are, some are already convicted criminals. And as I said, some are bouncing back and forth and tied to things like trafficking. So let's get into what we know for a fact, and that is that the El Paso Mormon faction cartel, and that's a real deal, which includes the Fort Huachuca, Arizona area, made an alliance with other cartels in Mexico, leveraging their colonies in Chihuahua, which is very close to this cartel territory, to create an amazingly large web of human trafficking, a pipeline, if you want to call it that. And let me go through some of the people, names, and the past. So, okay, suspects in this network are allegedly, and this comes from people close to Richard Halliday's case. Some of them are his parents, believe it or not. But they have named names. They have receipts. One of them is his leader, Dallas W. Hart, James and Leilani Hart's son. Her cousin, CID agent Tavita Nusa. His brother, U.S. Army Mortuary Operations Officer Solomuna Nusa. Vaedes Pueblo is an Integrated Disability Evaluation System Physical Evaluation Board Liaison Officer. James C. Hart, and also DES Director of Force Bliss Security, Thomas Kane, to name a few. The Hart family, right, allegedly practices polygamy, and Leilani Hart, a sister wife, as they call them in these structures, this religious structure, this polygamy structure. Again, important to point out, this is FLDS, not LDS. Confessed in a notarized affidavit that her family engaged in and facilitated incest and the worst types of leveraged crimes against children, including child torture and the possession of films, snuff films potentially, but including possession of films of child torture. So this is pretty dark stuff. I'm not sure. I mean, when it comes to the cartels, though, this, I don't know. Specifically, this particular genre of cartel identity, I don't know how these factions operate. But there's a lot of dark things in here that make it seem as if the leverage in these colonies, they're backed by other cartels as well. So anyway, let's get back into the recent killing of the cartel leader El Mencho. If you haven't heard the audio of this is really interesting. He literally is telling the military to back down, saying things like, for as much as I pay you guys, you shouldn't be doing this. So that tells me everything is corrupt down there. So Mexican cartel operatives, including the CJNG, and that is the cartel that El Mencho was included with, they were granted U.S. visas, according to this information and documentation. Tons of files on this, by the way. Access to narcotics investigation databases and fraudulent privileges such as government grants, contracts, NGO payments. They didn't have to always pay their taxes correctly. There was tax fraud involved. And no licenses needed for some of these businesses. All the while, they were allegedly involved with this human trafficking, this network, this pipeline of human trafficking. And they had some other things on their side. Allegedly, they had funeral homes as some of their businesses. And if you know anything about funeral homes, those incinerators can be pretty handy when you need to get rid of evidence. There are darker elements to this, believe it or not. Cannibalism becomes one of those alleged pastimes, human flesh eating, criminal trafficking, and the worst crimes against children. So this evidence points to satanic elements. Now, in the FLDS, there is something I've heard of that is called the SLDS, the Satanic LDS. And we see ties to this with probably some of the best work that's been done on this is by a couple who run We Are the People Utah podcast. And they've had an investigator from Florida. He goes by the name of Goel, Goel. He has to protect his real name. But he's looked into a lot of these characters, a lot of these crimes, and people like David Hamblin and others tied to that particular case, like former attorney David. Forgive me, having a moment here. David Hamblin and David Levitt getting a senior moment. Okay, so what they're finding is that the Frantzvi family, that is I finally said it correctly, not Francie, Frantzvi family, that is Erica Kirk's father's line, has deep connections with some of these organizations. Erica's aunt, allegedly, according to some of the information, is involved with some of these questions people have. Let me explain. She married a casino tycoon named Jack D. Solomon, who was a 32nd degree Freemason, Benai member, President's Club donor to both Brigham Young University and Utah Valley University, where Charlie Kirk was assassinated, to remind everyone. And the Frantzvi family documented connections have deepened some of these questions. For example, if this marriage was plugged into these powerful networks, these cross-border polygamist cartel networks, really it's a crime ring. And it ties into the Rothsteins, if you haven't heard this, allegedly, including the Rothstein organized crime dynasty through Erica's cousin, Nicole Rothstein, whose name carries the legacy of Arnold Rothstein, the Prohibition-era kingpin that made his fortune through selling alcohol when you couldn't, right? Now, Erica always claims to be Swedish through her father, Frantzvi. I cannot say that word. Yet, she's been using something strange, which is mofar. That's the term, mofar and farfar. Okay, bear with me. Farfar is her father's father. Mofar is her mother's father. No, it's weird, okay? Very strange. Allegedly, I'm just getting a crazy note that Trump orders Israel evacuation. I'll get back to that. This is someone who's actually tied in with what I'm talking about. That's why they're online here. We'll find out if that's really happening right now in just a second. But Farfar and Mofar. So Erica consistently claims to be Swedish through her father, yet uses Mofar and Farfar. Mofar, mother's father, Farfar, father's father. And it only makes sense if she had another mother, according to the allegations of some of those tied to, and Candace Owens herself, allegedly, if Lori Francie is maybe a sister wife and not the biological mother, if we can wrap our heads around that. Now, there is intel on this. Intel from, this is Fort Huachuca, forgive me. Remember that Candace Owens had a gentleman come on her show and say that he saw Erica Kirk a day or 2 days before, if not the day before. I can't remember if it was the day before or the day before the day before. I think it was the day before. But anyway, don't hold me to that. But prior to Charlie Kirk's assassination, he saw Erica Kirk at Fort Huachuca meeting with military. And this is strange. Specifically, if this is military intelligence officers, which is what's being alleged. So Lori Frantzvi was a longtime all-source intel instructor and contractor at Fort Huachuca during the same exact time period when Brooke Visoki, who is the daughter of Jeffrey Epstein's pilot, bear with me, Brooke, the daughter of Jeffrey Epstein's pilot, was there during the exact same time, trained as a military intelligence officer and asymmetric warfare officer. Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Lyons, our assigned casualty affairs officer who obstructed justice and was caught using asymmetric warfare deception tactics on our Gold Star family, operating and placing Erica's hidden family structure at the center of the same military intelligence network accused of protecting the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking pipeline in the El Paso Mormon faction cartel. Whoa, this is a mouthful. Okay, so we have all of these different satellite issues going on. So forgive me if it's confusing, all these different satellite issues, but you'll notice how they all converge and tie in together. So this would be national breaches of security. And this is a network, literally a worldwide web of criminal trafficking, intelligence breaches, asymmetric warfare, changing of important documents, allegedly child abusers, intelligence linked to cartels, people getting killed like Richard Halliday, his murder, predators, human consumption, cannibalism, and of course this other stuff that is getting leaked out through court documents. So I would say, and this gentleman, Richard Halliday's family, seems to believe, in my opinion, there's more here. Whatever it might be, it's wild. There's family secrets involved. Or so it appears. There is this New Mexico/Mexico Epstein connection to cartels, intelligence, genetic testing, human trafficking, military bases, El Mencho, CJNG, the cartel, the sister wives, Carla Francie, Erica Francie Kirk, and revealing that everything seems to converge when it comes to Erica. It's hard for people. At first, it's easy to dismiss, but once you start to get all the information, it starts to get harder to dismiss. So please continue to keep your eyes open to that. By the way, it is going to be interesting, this text that I just received. Let's see what's going on here. And it seems it's happening. Trump orders Israel evacuated. Let me see. And if we really need to buckle up and if this is actually happening, this is weirder than I expected while I was on air for sure. Let's see if there is an Israel evacuation. And yes, it is official. There is an active authorized departure evacuation process for U.S. government personnel and their families from Israel due to the surging security risks and tensions with Iran. So, what does this mean? Well, this follows a similar order for the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon earlier in the week. The U.S. has been building up its military presence in the region with reports of embassy staff departing via military aircraft and land routes. But now there's travel restrictions. The U.S. Embassy warned it may have to further restrict or prohibit travel to certain areas, including the Old City of Jerusalem and the West Bank. Apparently, the move is driven by safety risks stemming from terrorism, civil unrest, and potential military conflict. So the U.S. Embassy, there we have it. This is legit. Thank you for the text, Doctor. You know who you are. Doctor, I won't say your name. But the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem has urged American citizens to consider leaving Israel while commercial flights are still available. Interestingly, one of my close friends has been trying to get out of Mexico. He's in a part of Mexico that's still sort of difficult to fly out of. So this has context, but for a different reason. That was following El Mencho dying. And of course, even the president of Mexico went out to live on a ship, a military ship. But anyway, this is different context. And this is a rapidly evolving situation with reports suggesting that the U.S. Embassy staff were advised to leave as soon as possible, like right now. So we may have something big coming down the pipe. Now, recently, there has been a very interesting segment. I think it's okay for me to play this considering it's only audio. But there have been sounds recorded. I won't say where, but in the Uinta Basin of Utah at a base camp, a science project. And in the area there surrounding the old Bigelow Ranch. And this is in thick thickets. This was a recording. There are multiple ravines in this green verdant valley, and this is along one of them. And this particular one is south, a ravine south of the what's known as Skinwalker Ridge, right? Or the Mesa, they call it, which is actually land owned by the Hickens. And there's a lot to this. The original audio was sent quite some time ago. And there's a lot of pieces of evidence involved in the audio, but I want you to just hear the audio if you can and tell me what you think this sounds like. Let me pull this closer. You should be able to hear it. All right. Now, this is middle of the day. Some are alleging that audio is nothing. Others are saying that it is very out of place and spooky. Now, I don't know what the audio is, but I do know the exact location where the audio was gathered. I'm very familiar with the location, in fact, and it makes me wonder if there's more going on. So, what do you guys think that sounds like? There's been allegations from people like experts, like Robert Kreider with Kreider Exploration. He believes that sounds like a bipedal hominid, potentially of the Sasquatch variety. And, I don't know that he's wrong. He's an expert in these things and in this field. And he may very well be on top of it. Now, if you saw the episode of the podcast where Obama said, this is great, by the way. Obama's sitting there with a cup of coffee and he said, aliens are real. I haven't seen them. And they're not underground at that base out there. He's talking about Area 51 that I know of. Unless there's a conspiracy where they're keeping things from the president, which I would allege anybody in these circles know there is. It's a need-to-know basis, and it's not always certain who necessarily needs to know, right? Well, after that, Donald Trump said, he could get in a lot of trouble for spilling classified information, which tells us there's something to this alien thing. Saying that aliens is real could be considered classified information, right? This becomes an issue. Now, on the flip side, Trump then came forward and said, due to increased interest, I will be making an announcement. Now, prior to that, Laura Trump, this is the wife of Eric Trump, great guy. Eric Trump is a great guy. I can vouch for that. But I only say that because I had some mild dealings with him, real estate dealings. He's a very good businessman and honest. But when it comes to Laura Trump, his wife, and I should also point out Eric Trump is one of the moving forces behind a lot of child cancer, not only helping with kids that have cancer, but he helps with a number of other things, raising money for the hope of the parents and anyway, those types of things. But anyway, Laura Trump came forward and said, yeah, this is prior to Donald Trump saying that he would say something, but she had come out saying, yeah, we have a pretty good feeling that he's going to come out and say something. So what is it that he's going to say? Everybody's asking the same question. We're not entirely sure. Now, is it possible that it's going to be disclosure? That's what everyone wants to know. It could be. And if it is disclosure, is it going to have to do with the craft or biologics, as David Grush would say, or let's just call them what they are, aliens, right? It makes you wonder. And this is right at a time when there's a lot of distractionary effort, not just because of Epstein, but I almost feel like for NASA and other legacy programs that have perpetuated theatrical space programs and planetary studies, that distraction is not a bad idea, necessarily. Keep in mind that understanding how catastrophic UFO disclosure might be is important. Not everybody can deal with this the same way us in the conspiracy realm could. And what I mean is, if you're a conspiracy theorist or if you're open to these ideas, this has been known and documented for thousands of years. It's been something that every major world religion has talked about, every major world power, and it's not that big a deal, even if you go back all the way to the times of Samaria. And it's not a big deal until you realize what modern man is like. Modern man is much more comfortable swiping through their phones, looking at their social media, watching the news on television, and expecting to be told what to think. But if you realize that there have always been others, this information has been documented for thousands of years, and it's been at the fingertips of philosophers, world religions, and just about everybody. I believe just about every religion is a UFO religion. I haven't found one yet that isn't. So I think we're on to something. Now, if extraterrestrials are shown to be here, which I and many others believe they've been here probably since the beginning of time, or close to it, if extraterrestrials are allegedly here, what do they look like? We've heard they look like us, some of them. Others, like the tarantuloid beings that were seen in the backyard of this Las Vegas home where allegedly this craft landed, didn't crash, it landed. This was on Walpurgis night here in Las Vegas, Nevada, of all places. It's a pretty bright spot in the desert to land with a swimming pool next door at the neighbor's house. And I can tell you that neighbor said that these aliens were allegedly jumping over the fence between he and Angel's house. One of them in particular jumped over the fence, had a container, and was getting water out of his swimming pool. So this is interesting. Now, many whistleblowers have alleged that they've been shown alien technology. Off the top of my mind, I can think of Randy Anderson. I've talked, a bunch of names I can't mention have talked about being in deep underground military bases. I recently was on the Forbidden Knowledge News podcast with Chris Matthew, and I discussed someone I know very well who was part of a rapid ready response team for an HVAC emergency in a deep underground military base. And this individual said that he saw things that would go right along these lines. What we're talking about, extraterrestrials, cloning, maybe hybridization programs. To make a long story a little longer, I guess, we got time here, so I'll tell you what he said. He said that he got called, him and his team, his company. They went down quite a few levels. They were being ushered into this laboratory setting. And as they were getting ushered in by people with weapons, military with guns, he said that he saw these massive cylindrical containers that were bubbling with some sort of fluid inside, and there were bodies inside that seemed to be human, but didn't really seem to be conscious, right? They were probably alive in some way, shape, or form, at least biologically, but maybe not consciously. So you'll have to forgive me. I've got this window open. It's so hot today. There's like a heat wave coming through Vegas, so I've got this door open. And you might hear a little bit of sound. Neighbors pulling in. But he said that he walked through this corridor with military armed guards, and he saw these rows of cylinders with bodies, people, guys, men in them, bubbling fluid around them. And, obviously his team is looking at this. You don't see this every day. And they were kind of ushered along like, hey, you guys can't talk about this. And he was like, oh, yeah. Take us to where we're going. They got to where they were going. And they had a serious HVAC issue. But anyway, that's the point of where that's headed. Now, is there something big coming? I believe there is. And going back over a year ago, a band member of Jane's Addiction agrees with me. That would be none other than Dave Navarro. He plays for a band named Jane's Addiction, and he posted on social media and tagged Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. I'm going to read you this post, and I'll also tell you what I think. His post said, "Thanks to my pals, George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, for coming out to see us this evening. We talked about some things tonight that I'd love to share, but I'm afraid it's still classified. All I can say is you may not want to make plans for March 3rd, 2026. Then he said, well, you won't actually have a choice, and put a flying saucer emoji. So here's what I do know. What does that mean? Well, apparently, my wedding anniversary is going to be an event date. That's my wedding anniversary, 3/3. Time will tell what that event is. But what I can tell you is we do have a full lunar eclipse planned for that date. So there is a cosmic importance involved. But what exactly will the event be if it has to do with extraterrestrials? Some have alleged that something big is coming. If you remember, there's been a lot of FOIA requests revolving around these events. And the Black Vault actually just recently had a loss of a bunch of information. It wasn't that it just up and disappeared, it's that it got deleted. Of course, the Black Vault's been around for 30 years, 20 years with John Greenwald. Been around for decades. And for stuff to just up and disappear is a big deal. So when it comes to some of these things, specifically the CIA Act of 1949, which came up right after Roswell, a couple of years after Roswell, we realize that backstage in our intelligence programs, they are aware that sometimes there's got to be cleanup. There's got to be cleanup. And I've never been a big believer in FOIA because you're getting information from a government that you believe might be lying to you, yet you expect that information to be legitimate. So I'm really on the fence when it comes to Freedom of Information Act requests. But let me tell you an interesting letter that was recently posted online having to do with 3i Atlas, which is fairly still recent, right? This letter is a final response. This is actually to John Greenwald of the Black Vault. Dear Requester, this letter is a final response to your November 12th, 2025 Freedom of Information Act request. And this is where things get interesting, in my opinion. My opinion, of course. Request seeking any assessments, reports, or communications maintained by the Central Intelligence Agency referencing C3I Atlas or Interstellar Object 31, as it's formally known, from June 1st, 2025 to the present. We completed a thorough review of your request and determined that in accordance with Section 3.6A of Executive Order 13526, the CIA can neither confirm nor deny the existence of or non-existence of records responsive to your request. A lot there, okay? The fact of the existence or non-existence of such records is itself currently and properly classified and is intelligence sources and methods information protected from disclosure by Section 6 of the CIA Act of 1949. So they're going back to that, which kind of says this might have, in my opinion, if you've been in this game a while, this says this may have to do with non-human intelligence. Moving on. As amended, Section 102AI1 of the National Security Act of 1947, again hinting right back at Roswell, 1947, as amended, therefore your request is denied, pursuant to FOIA exemptions B1 and B3. As the CIA Information and Privacy Coordinator, I am the CIA official responsible for this determination. So, talk about saying something without saying something. And I guess that's what FOIA is all about, right? Saying something without saying something. So we have that. And I'm going to finish up here with Conspiracy Theory 101. And that is the fact, I'm going all the way back to this Jim Carey deal, because Jim Carey's talked very illuminatedly. He is, in my opinion, an illuminist. He's someone who's very smart. He is illuminated. He's definitely awake. In the past, he's let this be known, not only by performing in movies like The Truman Show, 23, you name it. He has, in interviews, acknowledged that he knows about the 33, what the numerological value of the 33 spinal cord in the human body are. He knows about retention of the seed, the Santa Colostrum. He's, in multiple different interviews, talked about very occult subjects, and he was very knowledgeable about these subjects. So, conspiracy theory. People are questioning if this is really Jim Carey accepting at this award show. And you know, I don't know if they're wrong. It doesn't look like Jim. It really doesn't look like Jim Carey. Maybe it is him. It doesn't act like Jim Carey. Maybe it is him. It doesn't act. It doesn't look. It doesn't seem like Jim Carey. I'm looking at a video right now, and unless he had some work done, I'm going to just pop this up. You guys have to see this. Does that look like Jim Carrey to you? Not really, right? Just all over TikTok. So I'll leave it there. Oh, and we have this one. Speaking of clones, what is up with Ghislaine Maxwell? The woman who testified before Congress doesn't look like her. Have you seen this image? Check this out. That doesn't look like Ghislaine to me, but I'm no expert on clones, right? There's been a lot about this cloning business for a long time. I don't know what to think about it. I don't know if anybody does. I really appreciate you guys. I love you. Thanks for listening in. Let's keep an eye on what's going on in the Middle East. Let's keep an eye with what's going on in conspiracy. Let's keep an eye on what's going on with Jim Carrey. And let's keep an eye on all of it, because that's the only way we can keep our eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, is to not forget to take a look around. God bless you all. Have a very blessed weekend. Thanks for listening in. Take care, Wolfpack. Oh, last but not least, don't forget to go over to HeroParanormal.com. HeroParanormal.com. Smash that green subscribe button. I'm giving away product to people that are becoming patrons. Surprise product. People have been happy with what they've received. Just subscribe. Shoot me a message via Patreon that you subscribed with your mailing address, and I will shoot you off a product. Have a blessed weekend. Take care.
Esoteric Research Organization. Hero Paranormal always setting up the pace, man. Crop circle tipping, Illuminati still tripping. Making those ears perk up, gonna make you question your earth. You better. Mystery bloodlines and secret society. Creepy shapeshifter says, come sit beside me. Yeah, cozy on up. So what's with all this spiral, acting like UFOs? Say what? So people in space wolf tiptoe through the dark. Third eye blinding, tune in and blast off, blast off. Blast off, baby. Blast off.